Hi there, my name is Fernando. I'm here to talk about prosthetics and how they've made such a huge impact on the world that we live in today. A prosthetic is essentially an artificial limb or device that is used to aid any person that has a missing limb due to injury or any sort of disease or birth defect. The first prosthetic that was ever used was back during back whenever the Egyptians were around. And even though it was more of an aesthetic than a medical use, the wooden toe was still an essential start to the whole prosthetic age. And you gotta start somewhere either way. There have been several recordings of soldiers throughout, any sort of battle or any like Civil War, dating all the way back to the Persian War and stuff, that they would use. They lost their limb, any sort of limb, like their leg or arm limb, and they had to use wood or some form of steel/iron just to hold up a shield or just to even walk in and of itself, because they had nothing else, and if they decided to go to battle, that was the best thing they could use. During the 1500s, though, a German who was a mercenary/knight by the name of Gotz von Berchelen made a prosthetic arm ahead of its time, way ahead of its time, because it was actually able to hold a pen and also hold a sword. So you could go to battle and still somehow write with this prosthetic arm, which was made of wood, some iron and steel, and actually had some form of digits, not just like a claw that you see several use nowadays. Dating back all the way to even to the Persian Wars, the 100-Year Wars, even the Crusades, they've been using prosthetics. Even now, more recently, like the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and even now into like the Middle Eastern wars that we're having nowadays, we've always been using prosthetics just for battle. And nowadays, it's becoming much more technologically advanced, as the fact that we have digits being used, and it's not just so much so as pretty much a plank or a piece of wood that helps you to stand up. This is more of a robotic need. And now they even use neuroprosthetics, because they actually use your nerves connected through your spine up to your brain in order to actually process this movement just with your brain, and you don't have to worry about just having a stump or just a piece of as a limb to do anything. Alright, mainly most of the prosthetics that we'll be talking about are motor prosthetics, because they deal with movement. They're devices that support the function of autonomous nervous movement and system, and the somatic nervous system attempts to aid conscious control of movement. They're now trying to focus on conscious control of movement, so researchers are currently attempting to build motor neuroprosthetics that will actually help restore movement in anyone's body. Nowadays, there are four main types of prosthetic ligaments or limbs, and most people wonder what they use as far as whether they should have what would they use if they had lost part of their forearm, or if they lost their entire arm, or the same thing about their leg. And a transtibial prosthetic limb replaces the limb below your knee, and a transfemoral prosthetic replaces your entire leg, essentially. A transradial, just like it says, is radial, so it will replace any limb below the elbow. And the transhumeral would replace your entire arm. Recently, a student from the University of Washington created a prosthetic limb that looks a lot like a tentacle that mimics the movement of a squid. And here's the video for that.
Arm looks like.
This arm, I've again gotten mixed reviews. People say it looks really creepy. Some people think it looks really awesome, but it's been a challenge seeing what people actually think of. There's two camps here. It's basically, it looks a bit like a tentacle, I have to admit, and it basically curls around using a wire that's inside right now for the model. But for production purposes, it would be a motor and cables that would run through. The cable would contract on one side, and then it would curl, uncontract, and uncurl, basically. It's a bit hard for me to describe.
Yeah, no, I think you described it really well. It does. It looks just like a tentacle.
More recently, researching in the Pentagon, there's a new prosthetic called the DECA prosthetic, and it actually has, just within its wrist, it has 4 processors and several circuit boards throughout the entire arm. And just between the wrist, there's probably various processors just throughout the entire arm, because this is like one of the first prosthetic arms that actually has individual digits like our actual fingers, whereas most prosthetic arms that have been made in the past is just like your finger or maybe half a digit. And so the fact that everything's motorized. What? Alright, come follow me this way. We'll talk with Tyree, because my man here knows a lot more about the DECA arm than what I do, at least.
Yeah, well, with the military, or this neurologist who works for the military, he's just trying to just make a new, what is it, like a prosthetic arm, but as far as like, he's trying to control it to your nervous system in your shoulder, because that is still connected to your spinal cord, even if you have a limb. So, but he basically, like, you can move your whole hand, you can pinch a key, and eat grapes. One dude, he actually felt like it was his arm that he was moving when he attached the arm to his limb.
Okay.
Kamen asked Fred Downs, the VA official in charge of prosthetics, to take off the hook he'd been wearing for 40 years and give the new arm a try.
I'm moving this around to see how stable my stump is inside here.
The arm is controlled by flexing the shoulder and pressing buttons built into his shoes, almost as if he's typing with his toes.
Ball of the foot, outside of the foot, and then toes.
So either way, if you've been in an accident.
Okay, I ain't from Dallas, but I need town boogie. I show my moves on to everybody trying to do it. I lead the functions and all the ladies trying to.
Or birth defects.
From birth, Bryce Duncan was different.
One leg was shorter than the other.
By the age of 2, he lived with a wooden leg.
Well, actually, we met over Connect 4.
But to Ben Schoolcraft, he was just another kid who liked what he liked.
Or you've been involved in a lightsaber battle with the Jedi.
Surely you can do better.
Alright, with prosthetics, there's pretty much just one big pro and one pretty much big con. And the greatest thing is that you will have something to replace your arm or ligament that you lost due to injury or, I don't know, some sort of disease. But you will be able to actually have an arm or have a leg. Granted, it won't be the same as your original arm or leg, which is the biggest con, but you will have something, and that's what prosthetics are all about, giving you your life back somewhere in form. A pretty big con, though, with some prosthetics, or older prosthetics, is the fact that they're not very comfortable, and they cause strain after maybe about 5 to 6 hours. But however, with the new DECA prosthetic that we just talked about, that has uses all sorts of new technology and has actual digits and processors and all sorts of things. Probably one of the most expensive prosthetics is that that one has some form of comfortability. It has like balloons that actually it works as a cushion to help with everyday comfortability.